Recording in progress.
All right, I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove Board of Trustees to order on Monday, March 21st at 6:31 p.m. We are holding this as a hybrid meeting, so those that choose to join us via Zoom can. The link is at the top of the agenda, or if one chooses, they can also call in or show up in person at the Village Hall here. We have a quorum. The agenda was properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4 is public appearances, public's opportunity to speak. If the public would like to speak, we ask that they share their name, their address, their municipality, and hold their comments to no more than 3 minutes. So I will pause, and if anybody is on the Zoom or on the phone would like to chime in, please do so. All right, next we'll move to discuss and consider our meeting minutes from our regular board meeting held on March 7th. Any questions, comments, edits, or consideration for motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, David. Any further discussion? Having heard none then, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, we are going to open a public hearing. This is a public hearing for the public to provide input on a proposed ordinance amendment for Chapter 274. And Larry, you want to just give a summary? Just pull forward, yeah.
Okay. This is just a small cleanup of the larger project to change the committees in the village. These changes were required to be taken to public hearing because they're changes to the land division ordinance, and by statute, even minor changes like rewording the committee have to run through that test.
All right, thank you, Larry. Anyone from the public on the Zoom or audio would like to comment? All right, then we'll close the public hearing and move on to discuss and consider ordinance 2022, amending Chapter 274. Any comments from board members? Questions?
I'll move to approve ordinance 03-2022, amending Chapter 274.
Second.
All right, thanks, Melissa. Thank you, Paul. Any further discussion? Having heard then all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next up, we have unfinished business. First item there is discuss and consider a bid award regarding Clark and Grove Street project. JJ.
Yep, you see my memo in the packet. Another letter from Kevin at MSA. Well under budget for the construction portion. We do have the purchase of the land for the stormwater treatment pond still to be tied in a bow, but Stafford's team is on it, and we've got a closing date. But that was why the note at the bottom just approved the bid by RG Houston contingent on the village closing on the land.
And just so everybody knows, JJ, the timeline, we would start this after Fireman's Festival, correct?
Yep. Given if RG's awarded the project that it's a local contractor we worked with a lot, there might be opportunities to get some things done, but largely after Fireman's, yep.
Okay. Any questions from board members, comments?
I just want to thank staff for their work on this, and I'm really excited about this being completed.
Me too. It's been a while coming.
Nearly the finish line. It will really showcase Bakken. This new amenities coming this year at skate park and everything will be well taken in, I think, along with the splash pad, Miracle Field, and the shelter, and of course rugby, and the soccer fields that are always used.
And the new skate park.
Yeah, new skate park. All right. So this is a discuss and consider. There's no questions or comments.
I will move to approve the awarding of the contract for Clark and Grove Street reconstruction to RG Houston in the amount of $1,469,000 contingent on the village closing on the land for the stormwater treatment pond.
Second.
All right, thanks, Melissa. Thank you, David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next up is discuss and consider authorizing Strand to prepare application for materials for urban non-point source grant for North Lawn Pond conversion project.
Okay.
You got this one as well.
I'll start and I will defer to Josh, but on a not so happy note, very recently came to learn that the project we've long planned and called Thaden Pond won't be able to be constructed as we had planned. And again, I'll let Josh go into any details, but broadly, it was built as a stormwater treatment pond. Over the decades, it appears there's been an intermittent stream that's started to flow into it. That changes the rules for what you can do. To his credit, Josh and his team at Strand recognized it as soon as they were brought on board as our village engineers and reached out to DNR. We had a meeting months ago with multiple agencies inside DNR, and I saw as the correspondence went back and forth between their team and Josh's, and ultimately just a couple weeks ago was determined that the big bang for the buck that we were going to get on our removals would not be possible at Thaden Pond. You can still do a project there, but you won't get the credit we've always counted on, and even to get the limited credit we could get would require a lot of ongoing proof, whereas other things you're designed and you get that credit assuming that it's taking out the phosphorus and the solids. In this case, we would have to actually have staff go out and sample the water and prove it on an ongoing basis. So that kills our return on that project. Josh's team pivoted very quickly, identified a couple projects that could be good ones to keep chipping away at our requirements. And one of them is the one we're talking about in your packet, offers much less than we've always counted on with Thaden, but pretty big bang for the buck. But given that, the timing of all this, to get authorization for Josh's team to move forward, we just wanted to bring it to the board to get any feedback, get yay or nay on this so that they can start to actually design, and then hopefully in the next couple weeks, turn around application materials for a grant that's due here in mid-April, where we'd have to have a resolution back on the next board agenda. So I think with that, Josh, if you're ready to correct anything I said that was wrong, or talk in detail about what we're looking at here, I turn it over to Josh.
Yeah, thanks, JJ. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great, that was a great summary. I have tonight, I wanted to just share my screen. So let me share that first, make sure you can see that. And I had maybe like 8 slides. It kind of does the same thing JJ did, but I was going to step through a few of these things just a little bit so everybody understood kind of the direction we were going with a stormwater kind of plan discussion overall. So as I flip through these slides, if somebody has a question, don't feel free to speak up. I only have about 8 slides here to kind of walk through. So the stormwater quality plan results, as most of you are aware, the village is broken up into a couple different stormwater reaches. One in the purple goes to Lake Kaganza, and the other goes to the Ahara River. And there is requirements for TSS removal and TP. So TSS is your total suspended solids that you're trying to take out of the water, and then the TP is the total phosphorus that you're trying to remove from the water as part of the process. You guys can see the screen, right, from where you are, JJ?
Yep.
Okay. So it's the pink and kind of the purplish blue. And in Lake Kaganza watershed, there really is no need to expand some of your treatment there because you are meeting the limits currently to that watershed. It's the Ahara, the pink, that you are 28.9 tons per year short on removing sediment from the stormwater. And then you're also 244 pounds per year short on your total phosphorus removal in that reach. So part of these projects that we're going to talk about, that's to get to this goal, or to at least start to kind of chisel away at it over time. So some of the stuff that MSA laid out is kind of shown in red here of here's different ways that you could potentially, pond locations that you could potentially remove this total phosphorus, so this TP. And really what they highlighted here was the Thaden Pond right in the center. Assuming you can see my mouse also on your screen as I'm circling it. And really that was going to get you 87 pounds of that 244. It was really the best bang for the buck, and it made sense at the time when they were first just kind of studying it. But as we studied it, as JJ mentioned, it has some hurdles that we'll talk a little bit about. The other things that we would propose tonight is these two blue areas. The farthest one to the north is in North Lawn that could potentially move 55 pounds. And then also this Cooley Highlands, you could reconfigure these ponds and get another 25 pounds of TSS, which when you add them together, it's about that 80 pounds that Thaden Pond was projected to get as part of the treatment there. So I kind of sum that up in this table of the different alternatives that are out there for TSS reduction and TP reduction for performance. And you'll definitely, as you kind of peck away at these, we excluded Thaden from this now, but you will definitely get your TSS reduction, but you can still see you're short of that 240, what did I have before, 244 pounds per year of the TP reduction. And this is hard to get, and a lot of communities are trying to get it, and you're short of that 126 pounds, but the Ahara winds will continue to allow you to help count for that shortage that you pay into now to make up some of that shortfall. And really, as part of your permit and part of the process is they want to see that you're making progress over time, that you're starting to slowly work at this phosphorus reduction in the system. So Thaden Pond, we started to look at Thaden Pond. The DNR determined that there's fish habitat, they're spawning up the creek that goes along here. So there's a creek that runs right along it now and continues to head north. It's an online pond, which is not allowed. An offline pond is allowed. So when this was first constructed, likely what took place is there was an overflow up here at this upper reach of the pond. And what was supposed to happen at the time was during large events, this creek would swell up, it would go over this overflow, and it would fill in this Thaden Pond area. Well, over time, it kind of cut a channel, and it cut a channel into the pond so that this pond became sort of online with the rest of this creek. And fish spawning could take place there, fish spawning could continue north. And now they don't really want us to take the low flow. So the way you get this TSS reduction and the TP reduction is really during low flow events. It's during your 1-year events and everything else that you'd want to collect out of the stream from the north and direct into the pond. But then it cuts off the water that can continue to head down without a control structure that you'd have at the end. So the fish wouldn't be able to spawn up through this in order to get it to function like it has in the past. So that was their main concern. You could kind of do a hybrid of this, but like JJ said, it would require continual testing, and you wouldn't get this 87 that was projected for the TP reduction. It would probably be half of that, if not less, and you would constantly have to monitor it. And the cost, the bang for the buck here really isn't in this pond like it was when it was first looked at. So we looked back and we looked at it. It seems like really North Lawn is probably the way to go first. It gets you, there's an existing dry pond here at this location now, and really to be converting the dry to wet. That allows you to settle out the solids, and it allows you to capture all those low storm flow that goes into that pond. We'd have some storm sewer rerouting. MSA, when they started to look at this, was looking at a pond up here and down here, which you could probably just get away with the one wet pond. We've looked at this already, and just direct the storm water this way. So the purple here is some new stormwater piping. Just during low flows, it would take the water up to here, and during high flows, it would still maintain this overland route to the south. And it still gets you 55 pounds per year, and you're using an existing location to boot, so you're not coming up with a new location. There's some conversation that we might want to have in the future of, if this is wet, we'd want to talk to the school district, we'd want to talk to the residents around so that they understand that there's going to be a change at this location, or would be a change, and what does that mean, and does there need to be any other features or thought laid out as part of the design of that. Funding, like JJ said, it's coming quick. I think we all thought that into the beginning of this year we could apply for these funds for Thaden Pond, and it just doesn't make sense. So the DNR, if we change routes here and go north lawn, the DNR could match that, the construction of that up to $150,000. It's due April 15th, so we have to move pretty fast. The award date would then be in 23, which is always when you wanted to construct the pond. If it was going to be Thaden, would have been in 23 also. And then to boot, there's also a Dane County grant for 50%, matching up to $500,000. And there's really no due date to that. So usually what happens is you apply for this first grant, and then you roll right into this Dane County grant shortly after at the same time. And you try to see if you can kind of get some match funds from both programs. We've been pretty successful in surrounding communities in Dane County to capture both of these. To what extent, it kind of varies depending on how many other communities are looking at the Dane County Urban Water Quality Grant. But it's a really good chance to fund projects. So usually what we would suggest is, if you're going to work at trying to remove TP, total phosphorus, and your TSS, is, this is in every 2 years is that first grant, 150,000. That happens every 2-year cycle. So, do a project, think about it, maybe if you want, apply 2 years later, or maybe 2 years after that, and slowly kind of peck away at this. So you're kind of trying to maximize both funding sources at the same time. There really is, the question always comes up is there a deadline for any of this? How long do we have before we meet we need to meet these limits? And right now you can buy into Yahara wins, so there is no real deadline. You're a handful of years away from the next permit coming up, closer to 2030. But what they like to see is, by your next permit, depending on when your last permit was issued, they're going to issue the new ones in 25 through 30, 2025 through 2030. They like to see you making like 10% increments every permit cycle. And you would easily be doing that even with just doing this first pond. So a lot of communities are at least trying to meet that 10% and trying to continue to be proactively tackling it. So I guess what we're proposing tonight, JJ, you mentioned it, is kind of switching the grant application from Thaden to North Lawn, and going that direction with a construction project to the north. Is there any questions?
Is this, just so I understand, so we're talking about taking what's currently a dry pond and turning it into a wet pond, so it'd be standing water?
Yes. Yep.
Sean, are you on? I'm just curious on your take around.
That was my first visit after this meeting with Josh, right across the hall to Sean's office, but I'll let him answer for himself.
Yes, I'm here.
Sean, can you comment? That's a healthy cut of North Lawn Park. There are a lot of activities out there. A lot of soccer games are played out there. I'm not in love with this, but at the same time, rock on a hard place here. So I'm just curious from a Parks and Rec perspective, how you feel about this much of North Lawn disappearing.
We don't program that space per se. It does end up getting used occasionally by the soccer groups if they have more games going on up there than the field, than just the one field. That's typically a dry pond. Am I correct, JJ, in that? And so they're able to, groups are able to utilize it, but we don't program it, David, per se.
And there is a tree line, correct, that's behind the tree line, if I'm picturing this in my head right?
Yeah, but that's not a really significant or thick tree. I'm not even, I think some of those have been removed because they were dead and dying. And
Yeah.
Okay. I guess it's
it's a berm.
I mean, from my take, Josh, you had a really good map of all the different ponds throughout the village. You go back a couple. Yeah, that one. I'm just wondering, like, and again, you guys are the experts here, but I mean, is there any way to, any other options, or is this really the, between Coyle Highlands and North Lawn Park, is there, just trying to think of like, out of the box thinking here to try to get these numbers where we want them. Because it's just, that's a significant portion of North Lawn Park that's going to be turned into a standing water.
Yeah. The hard part with part of that is we have to capture it at all these outflow locations too. So, I think the easiest part, right, like you're saying, is to find where all these kind of come together and already take place. And so you're looking at these kind of natural spots where you already have the stormwater, conveyance to those points. Looking for a different location or another location would mean we'd have to ultimately also have more infrastructure on maybe getting the stormwater there, especially the low flows to those locations. So
Yeah.
there's a cost to that, and then you start to weigh in, there's a ratio of how much cost is going to take per pound of total phosphorus that we remove, right? And sometimes you're spending a lot of money to remove a little bit of phosphorus. So we're trying to grab the most cost effective, I guess, right now. So if this is we don't want to put, you're right, like a wet pond up in that location, then we're going to have to look at some other cases, or maybe the Highlands area, because there's already wet there, we can expand this, and instead of we were talking about it being 4 cells here, make it 1 large cell and reconfigure that. I mean, that might be a first step, instead of going all the way up and doing North Lawn. I mean, ultimately, your best 2 bangs for your buck are the 2 blue locations. So whether you do one of them now, we might be coming back, in a few years and saying, well, maybe it's time to look at the other location. It's either that or, continuing to talk to the DNR about Thaden Pond. And I don't want to mislead the village either, in the sense of there's many communities, debating these same things, and a lot of it is happening in only the open space that they have today, so they lose some of that open space, which is tough. I also want to caution that you don't want to do too much too fast, because this total phosphorus limits are changing a little bit, and the technology is changing behind how we can remove it. So every 5 years, it seems like there's new ways and new apparatuses in order to get some of this out of the environment. So that's constantly changing too. So I wouldn't suggest you go and spend a bunch of money in trying to get down to that last point today. You probably just slowly work at it over time.
That's helpful, Josh. I think I like the idea around Coyle Highlands, making it one big one. I think that for North Lawn, and I have a lot of concerns around with the school and the park right there. And I have a special needs son who, we've taught him how to swim, but not every little kid knows how to swim, especially special needs kids. So they see the water, they want to go swim. So I'd have questions around a fence, and I mean, it's just the placement is just, I'm uncomfortable with it, right? It's not a definite no, but it's just, there's a lot of open questions and a lot of concerns I have around that, even beyond that. North Lawn's just, it's very problematic for me.
Yeah, JJ and us discussed a fence. That was something that we'd have to start conversations with right away with everybody around there. Is the fence, because of the use in the school and the parks, is a fence something that you want to consider right away. All these ponds will have would have a safety shelf to them. So what that means is you'd have your steep slope coming down to the water. You'd have usually a 10-foot safety shelf, so it would be you know, a very shallow pool before you got to the deep pool. So if somebody got into the water, they wouldn't be right into the deep stuff. But, you know, that safety shelf is great for in 99% of the occasions, but during a large rain event, that pond's filling way up until it can then disperse the water out over a 24 to 48 hour period. So that's, you know, that's when the safety shelf really isn't obviously, you know, it's deeper than that there. So those are great points. It's something to consider.
Josh, could you speak a little bit to if we were to get the go-ahead to put in Strand's time, getting together some design for the application, what are we obligated to with either of these grants? Because, yeah, ideally, we wouldn't have been bringing this to the board with, you know, 2 weeks to talk about it and then
Yep.
have a resolution. So, I mean, is it possible we go for the grant and then we really get into whether it's Coyle South or North Lawn first? I mean, we can always leave the money on the table, I assume.
You can. I would say it'll be somewhat competitive. I know Madison's going after a handful of them too this time around. They have several that they're tackling, so I know Dane County will have them. I think you're going to be better if you pick one, JJ, than to say, well, it could be this one or that one. Both of them will have a little bit different costs going into it, and both of them have a different amount of TP. So I think this one also you get quite a bit more TP for, you know, 55 pounds. Then it's a little bit better bang for your buck. So when these funding agencies see the ratio of, you know, how much money are we spending to get what percent of total phosphorus out of the environment into these watersheds, they'll rate it a little higher. The harder part with the other one is it's already a wet pond, right? So actually overall, when you get done with that one, you know, it's already getting about 35 today. You're taking credit for 35 pounds over there already today, and you get an additional 25 by expanding it. But there is a decent amount of work that goes into draining that one, expanding it, re-clay lining it, or in this case, it's already dry. It's going to be a little bit easier construction, and you're going to get quite a bit more phosphorus out of it. So they're kind of two different projects, so I don't know if we can go in and say, well, we'll do this one or that one. I think you'll have a better opportunity if you do select one. And I do think maybe North Lawn is the one that you probably would have a better chance of securing funding on today. You know, thinking about a few of the handful other ones that in Dane County that we know about that are also likely going to be out there for funding, this one would make a better case.
Josh, just a question on the Coyle Highlands.
Yep.
There have been complaints, you, JJ, and I have been out on Coyle South, or Coyle Highland, or whatever the heck that is, Coyle, where backyards of folks get really mushy quite a long time into the summer, actually. You're already staking?
I don't think so, but
Okay.
and I don't know if Josh knows enough about the specifics there. I think this would be a completely separate issue.
It would not help that area, okay.
Yeah.
I was grabbing for another straw.
Yep. Nope. I'll catch you up on that one later, Josh.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's coming from a different source, I believe, right?
And that's more of a grading issue back in the
Yep.
in the lots and.
Yep. And the
Yeah, it's
developer.
not so much the ponds are overflowing or something before the outlet, right, where they're backing water up in. It's more of a flat or poor drainage issue in the back lots, probably, JJ, to get the water there.
Yep. And
Yeah.
in the area John and I are thinking of, yes.
Okay,
I was just wondering if it would take any of the
right,
water seeping through that area at all, but
right.
just to help the problem. The problem is that they have to basically regrade several lawns, probably a dozen or more lawns.
Yeah,
But if it helped some of the water going down there, that would make some people happy.
right. And I guess, JJ, we didn't answer the last part of your question is, yeah, if you get the funding and even if, let's say, you only get a partial funding and you don't want to go the rest of the way, I mean, you're not obligated at that point. It would be nice to use it, right, so that the following year or in later years, if you ask for it again, they're not like, well, they didn't take it last time, right? You know, I'd hate to go down that road where if you get a decent amount of funding that you're turning it away, but you can always turn it away. You can. Or in that case, if it doesn't work up there for a political reason or a safety reason, you know, at the end of the day, do we then go and say, hey, can we switch the funding to this location and ask for it then? I mean, maybe that's a route too, to over to the Highlands, you know, if you do have the funding already dedicated to the village.
I actually think it would be better to try to, if we're going to chip away at this anyway, start socializing North Lawn to see all the issues, concerns, et cetera, but go first chip. Because it's already wet, and it is going to help, and we're eventually going to have to do it either way. And because you only have a few more weeks before this grant is, and you got to probably name a project, we'd be better off going after that location and start talking to folks about North Lawn and what can be done there. And then Sean can start thinking about, you know, of all the new parks and everything else that he's getting in the school and everything, where could we program North Lawn if we were to do that? I share David's concerns about being near the school. I've been over there. There's kids always playing in that dry spot. They spread around, they pick up games, whatever. They're there.
Josh, do you think, I mean, would it still be worth going for the grants? And so would we still be looking to get you guys moving and bring back a resolution for Coyle Highlands in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think so. I still think you guys are in a good position to go after some of these funds and start to kind of work, you know, start to work towards this. We've been very successful in a lot of communities in Dane County getting and securing some of these. So I still think we can make a good case for the Highlands. It's not something, if it wasn't a good case, I wouldn't be suggesting that one either. Either blue one is a good case to kind of move ahead with.
I just want to say that I agree with what David and John have said. My concern with it too is being like next to the school and next to fairly close to residences, and us moving so fast on it, I don't think that would sit very well with our residents or myself either. I mean, if it was something that had been in the works for a while that people knew about, that would be one thing, but this is totally changing that landscape next to areas where we know there are small children. So I like the idea of going for Coyle Highlands first and talking with residents about North Lawn then.
Is that a motion?
Sure. I will move to authorize Strand's team to move forward with grant application materials and project planning for the conversion of Coyle Highlands.
Second.
All right, it's motion second. Any further discussion? Having heard none then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. All right, Chief, you're still here and you're very patient, so you know what we're going to do? Then nobody objects. I'd like to move the Deer Grove EMS Commission discussion up, because I think Chief wants to talk to us about a few things. If that's all right? Does anybody have any concerns with that? We're going to be here for a little longer. No, he's already waited. Yeah, probably should have done that earlier. Sorry, Chief. So what we're going to do is we're going to move Deer Grove EMS Commission up, and we're going to let Chief take it away, and Lisa will keep us on it, keeping everything moved through. Chief, please.
All right, so we'll start with the ARPA request. So this was discussed with, this whole process started years ago with applying to the Assistance to Firefighter Granting Program to replace the radios. It started out as a large regional grant in the first 2 years, and for this final year that we submitted in January, simmered it down to Cottage Grove Fire, Deerfield Fire, and Deer Grove EMS. We also we're searching for other potential uses of funds that might be available to us, and the ARPA funding opportunity came to us, so we began exploring it. The initial exploration was during the preliminary rule time, when it was not positive if it was a usable expense for those funds or not. But as the final rule has came out, it's been determined that kind of you can use the funds loosely for anything that can relate to the pandemic, is my understanding in research. So we've still got the AFG grant in place, so our request is similar and exactly like the fire department's, that if the AFG weren't to come through, that we could use ARPA funds to replace our radios. And in the document that I provided, it shows that the amount that we would request from the village, based off of either just being the 3 communities in the EMS district, or all 5, including the contracted communities contributing. As explained, I don't remember if it was at Joint Fire Committee or which meeting it was at, the numbers that we provided are exactly the same as what we applied to AFG. So these are not necessarily today's prices. They're MSRP prices based off of the AFG submission from January. We do know that some of the radios were less than what these are, but we also don't exactly know what the radio prices will be when we'll make the official funding request. So moral of the story would be that if we get a no from AFG, we would put together what the package is and have it be no more than this request.
All right. Thanks, Chief. Any questions from board members? How old are the radios? They're in similar age as fire?
Ours are just a tick newer, but we're experiencing very similar problems as they are. Throughout the course of last fall, we did have 2 fail that we've replaced at the end of last year, but we suspect that as we run more calls, we use them more, we're going to experience more failures, and they're simply not repairable.
Yep.
They'll need to be replaced rather than repaired. And as a for instance, the portable radios that we purchased were $1,900. The average repair for an antenna was, last I knew, somewhere around $500. At that point, for a almost 10-year-old radio, that doesn't super make sense.
Yep, I knew that. I just want to make sure that was on the record.
Yeah, and I'll say with vehicles, the plan would be going forward, not the next vehicle, but the vehicle after that. As we replace the vehicle, we will also cycle in new radios with the vehicle. That way, we can be a little bit more reactive to radio-based problems, especially portables, because they are a little bit less expensive, and replace them as we go, rather than needing to have this big venture of attempting to fund, hundreds of thousands of dollars of radios all at once.
Okay. Any questions from board members, comments? Larry?
So, what's the
Step away.
I'm the one telling everyone else to do that all the time. What's the in terms of your budget schedule on the timing of, it says in your memo, May or even as late as July sort of answer that you'll get, and it's not guaranteed and maybe not even likely that you'd get it, but is this a decision that has to be made now? And if so, why wouldn't we wait until we see if we get those grants?
Well, I'm an optimist, so we're going to get the AFG grant, no doubt about it. This is just elementary. It's kind of making sure that we know we have a funding source, hoping.
So you can place the order?
No, we're not going to place the order. I think that was part of the discussion initially, was that we would try to place the order and kind of jump the shark a little bit and get ahead of the game. If we put anything in process for these radios, we jeopardize the AFG process, because we can't commit. We can't even. I wouldn't even risk Worth under the table shaking a hand and saying, please order these for us, because there's going to be some paper trail, and we don't need FEMA finding a way to kind of invalidate our grant opportunity.
But a decision by the board to backstop that funding wouldn't do the same?
No. You're just effectively earmarking of a funding source that wasn't available to us at the time of the grant, but has become available to us now.
I think similar scenario to what fire is asking. They're hoping that the grant will come through for fire. In fact, that one's, I think, tied with Deerfield. Yeah, it's all interconnected.
Yeah, it is. Unlike the Plimo vent system that got installed in the Cottage Grove Emergency Services building, an EMS agency can't be a joint requester for fire department equipment. So Cottage Grove Fire is actually the grant originator for the AFG grant.
And you mentioned that they're not repairable. Could you mention, is it because they're obsolete? I know that was what was discussed.
Yeah, they're being at their end of use period. So we could get them repaired, but you run the risk of them having the same failure quickly again, and then you have several $100s kind of spent on something that should have probably been replaced, a year or two ago.
Chief, I've talked to the fire department around coming up with a replacement strategy around radios. Have you put any thought or any plans into doing a replacement strategy moving forward for radios?
Yeah, that's part of what I discussed, where
I didn't catch that.
we only own our vehicles hopefully for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's unlike a fire truck where they're going to own it for 25.
Yeah.
They could likely need 2 radios or maybe even 3, depending upon functionality and whatnot in a fire truck, where going forward our replacement will be, we get these radios, we get a new chassis, we put a new radio in it so that it's part of the capital purchase then, and then we'll work on having a cycled schedule for the portable radios themselves. It's a lot easier to take and add in 5 years, 2 or 3 portable radios per year to cycle them through, rather than needing to order 20 all at once.
I guess I should have reformulated my question. Or let me add on to that. In addition to the radios, and again, I'm coming at it from a fire department perspective, so it's a little different, right? But there's consumables, right? Capital assets like radios and that sort of thing. Is that, and I'm just asking maybe a remedial question here, like, is that moving forward, will you be doing, like, is that something that's in your capital budget, right? Replacing those, besides an ambulance and some radios, I mean, are there capital assets that will continue? Because I've noticed just with the fire department that was not something in the past that they would use equipment until it literally died.
Yeah, and I'd say that in the past was something we had done as well, maybe as an industry as a whole. It's not just kind of.
I don't think it's just specific to Cottage Grove Fire
Right.
Department. I think that's just in general, these public services, right? I'm just, from what little research I've done is it's use it until the wheels fall off, right?
Yeah, no, our plan would be to keep them on a cycle and keep them in a good working rotation.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good, thank you.
yeah, because Dave, what we were talking about with the fire was like an asset management or a master plan that would show X amount of years, 10 years, or whatever, in terms of replacement, actually having it documented. In 2024, we need 3 radios and estimated cost.
Yeah, we have a good majority of that stuff already in a plan that was submitted either very late last year or earlier this year. It didn't get down into the radios because we were focused on let's get all these radios in this grant, and then, kind of again lose track of that we need to replace them over a course of time. That's more of making sure that we have them that work now. But we do have a plan that I actually have it go out almost 15 years to show several different ambulance replacements and some of the other major equipment that we've purchased, like cardiac monitors, and putting those things all on a schedule. So yes, those are small fine tuning to the schedule we already have that we'll add to it.
Thanks, Chief.
This is Heidi. Can I jump in with a question? or-
Yeah, please.
I don't want to interrupt. Okay, great, thanks. One thing with the fire department that I thought really created a sense of urgency was that teams were sharing radios, and I thought that really pushed this up in priority significantly. Do all members that go out on an emergency call currently have their own radio, or are they sharing?
We have 2 radios assigned to each ambulance. So if we were to, for instance, have a third member on a call for service, there might be a day where a third member might not have a radio. It's not predictable because obviously it's based off of availability and when people are staffing. For instance, tonight we'll have a additional volunteer on duty, and one of the staff members then wouldn't have a radio.
And are you ordering in this proposal for radios to have enough? For if there was a third person, that they would have a radio as well?
There will be enough to make that accommodation, yes.
Great, thanks.
How does that impact your service if not all of your members have the radio?
Well, we normally work a little closer together than the fire department does, and we're not, I don't want to diminish what EMS staff do on calls for service, but it's not an active hazardous environment in that there could be hazards in the environment that we're unaware of, but it's not like there's a room filled with smoke or possible dangerous chemicals. So with one person not having a radio, could it be a problem? Yes. But normally they're within good earshot of one another. We don't have loud sounds. We don't have 500 fire engines running with chainsaws and other power tools. So.
No, and I didn't mean to diminish the need for them at all. I understand that. I just was interested in your services all and how that all works.
But I think it stresses the importance. Is there any risk at all? Because we had to really drill down to it with the fire department. What's the risk? Come to find out that there's a possibility we have firefighters going into a fire without a radio, and that's not acceptable.
Yeah,
I would say the same for your team. If there's any risk at all, that wouldn't be acceptable. We have, in that scenario, if you're saying worst case scenario, you got 3 people and one person doesn't have a radio and they're potentially at risk.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, some would say that some of the most violent acts happen on EMS calls because you don't necessarily expect it. Also, when you talk about like law enforcement, is there what would be a normal, as perceived as this is going to be in the normal call, not going to have any danger, end up being the most danger because you might have your guard down a little bit. I think as EMS providers, we downplay the danger we might see a little bit because on average, do we actually see it? No. But is it there? Yeah.
I think, Chief, one thing that I'll try to wrap it in a bow, like what you're getting from us is more of there's been a consistent kind of thread of needs versus wants.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, I'm making a lot of assumptions here, right, from an EMS perspective, but there's an assumption of I have a needs and a wants list. And then there comes a point where that needs list, you start looking at things differently. And you're like, well, that needs probably more of a want, right? And I think what you're sensing from us is, tell us what your needs and your wants are, and let us work together with you to try to determine what is a need and a want. And personally, I'd rather, in conversation with the fire department, I'd want you to lean more towards making a want a need, and let's talk about that.
Sure.
Right? And then if it truly is a want that could be a need, let's prioritize it in a budget perspective, right? But I've just seen, just in working with the fire department, that there's this kind of this penchant to downplay everything, right? And it's just like, that's just a want, I'll never need this. And then we're talking about radios, and a 2-man fire team goes in a building, well, we only need 1 radio. No, everybody needs a radio. So like, we're just using that as an example,
Yeah.
right? But it's just a willingness to work together and to say, hey, like, tell us what you really need, and let's talk about that. And if it truly is a want that you really think would help, life-saving measures, let's talk about it, right? Because it just seems like there's been in the past, there's been maybe a lack of willingness, or maybe a lack of, or maybe the conversation hasn't been as free-flowing, right?
Sure.
I think that just an openness to have a more conversation around topics and that sort of thing.
I want to piggyback off of that, and it could be an assumption, but, is there a scarcity mindset around some form of repercussions of a financial issue? And at the end of the day, I think you're hearing it from us, we cannot compromise safety.
No, I don't think it's exactly as you mentioned it, Paul. I think it's more of we've attempted as an industry and as a local department to manage with the funds that have been provided to us and not going out of the way to ask for too much more to maintain operations. Sometimes to the detriment of the equipment we purchase, whether it be refurbished or used, or waiting till the last moment as the very last radio is about to die. Now, as you're talking, the thing that concerns me most about our radios now is that not on a night like tonight where one member might not have a radio would be, are their radios going to actually work or fail because of their age? And that's my bigger concern. So that, to me, is what would take it from, I think 2 years ago it was a want if we could replace it, and now it's very quickly turned into a need.
Yeah, and I think that highlights having worked in IT for decades now, right? Like it's never a need until I need it, right? It's like, let's have the conversation, right? And we can, through two-way conversation, we can say, okay, like, I don't think it's a need right now, but if I wait 6 months, it turns into a burning fire, right? Like, I never want to get to that point. I would rather, for any needs, it's already mapped, it's been budgeted, things just roll over, right? And it's really just a conversation on the wants. And, when you have that kind of communication, again, I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle, right? But when you have that conversation, like, there tends to be much fewer surprises, if any, right? And that's just the point I'm trying to get to, is let's just eliminate surprises. And when you've got 10-year-plus-year-old radios, we're way past need, right? And so, then again, that's just representative. That's just an example. But I'm sure there's lots of other equipment you'd love to, especially used equipment. Like, I've been there, done that, right? That you're like, man, if we could just get something new, we'd get more life out of it. It would be, ultimately you get better patient outcomes that way, right? From your perspective. So that's all I was trying to get to. So, thanks.
This is Sarah.
If I can ask.
Go ahead.
All right, thanks, Sarah. If I can ask, is there a standard for EMS that each person on a three-person call would have a radio, two people have a call, you bring a fourth radio in case one of the three radios dies? Is there any sort of standard that you can refer us to?
I would say that we would fall under the NFPA guidelines. No, there isn't anything specific to EMS. So we would be a general NFPA guideline for radio communications on an emergency scene. There's not a specific EMS governing body that would make those guidelines or recommendations.
All right. Thanks, Chief. And just for the record, the Chief always mentions he loves our Long Village board meetings, so I just wanted to get that out there.
Sarah, please.
I was wondering, and maybe this question is more for Matt, but I know we approved at the last meeting the use of ARPA funds for the fire radios. Do we have enough money in our ARPA fund for both EMS and fire? Just want to confirm that.
So who gets to be Matt for the next couple minutes? Matt stepped out, Sarah.
I think,
Oh, okay.
I think we do.
I can't see that.
Is Alicia on?
Yeah, I don't know if Alicia's on, but I believe we do, depending on where both of them come in, because it's a portion of each for our community versus the other communities.
And that's actually what I can stall a little bit for Matt. That's as we're representing a lot of different communities, I want to be looking at you, but I'm trying to talk into this mic, so don't think I'm being rude. As we talk about ARPA funds for the communities we represent, it seems like what we're always talking about, well, how can we spend ARPA funds? And I just don't think that's the right way to ask the question. It's what things do we need as a community to spend money on, and then we'll figure out how we're going to pay for them.
Right.
And so, ARPA is just another source of funding from grants, from general levy and fees and everything else we get that goes into the pot that you spend your money from. And so I think it would be, regardless of what the answer is in terms of how much is available in the ARPA funds, I think you treat it all the same,
right.
Especially now that ARPA is, as the chief said, it's really without limit on what you can use it for. So maybe don't think about it in that context.
So do you think the motion needs to be specific to ARPA funds then, Larry, or can the motion
No, I wouldn't.
be more general?
And that was my intention to break in at some point and suggest that the motion be changed to just determine whether or not you want to fund this. And then when that decision has to be made, I guess if it's going to be tonight, great. If it's closer to the May or June or July timing, great. However you decide to do it, I would take the ARPA language out of the motion.
But we had some discussion about that last time with the fire department funds and how to get around the grant requirements. And so now it's a little confusing what you're saying.
I think it's more of the motion is you're supportive of that investment, period. And that's it. Keep it very simple. Otherwise, you will get kind of in a rabbit hole and you don't want to be there. And I think it's just keep it simple and it's the easiest way to do it. If that's what you
For
feel.
instance, there might be something that comes up for some reason with ARPA that you really there's something you really need to do and it's a good fit for ARPA and you want to use different funds for this. I'm just never a big fan of pigeonholing where you don't have to as far as how you're going to account for it. So.
And I'll speak to the pigeonholing of the ARPA specifically, is we didn't want to ask for something that was above the budget that we had already asked for. So we were attempting to be also respectful of the normal budgetary process.
Matt's back now, Sarah.
Okay, I think the question's answered. I don't have the question anymore, but thank you.
You were on the cue too and you missed it. It's okay. It's all right. You can read it back or listen back. It's all right. I don't know if any board member wants to indicate support or anything like that. I mean,
Well, I'm definitely supportive of getting radios for the EMS. But now I don't have any idea how to make the motion because I was going to copy it from last time.
and maybe it's not a discuss and consider really. It was an EMS, but it's not on our agenda either. So
Okay, good.
I think for Chief, all he needs really to know that in general, I think and speak up, board members, we're supportive of replacing, these radios because now it's clearly a need. And we can't have folks having broken radios out there trying to save a life. So, and the funding part, as Larry referenced, the board will figure that out if we do. If in the case you're an optimist and the grant comes through, awesome. We don't even have to have this conversation. So
We'll come in and throw a party that night.
that's fine with me.
So if you're just looking for us to say support, I'm supportive of it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't speaking out of turn for any board member. I didn't hear anybody say otherwise, but again, I'm not taking words out of anybody's mouth these days.
And that's kind of the way I recommend not pigeonholing it to ARPA, because between now and then, there might be 10 other calls for ARPA money and who knows what other, we think we have the final rule now from the feds, but who knows, and it seems to me that makes it contingent upon that, and that we don't spend that money, and
Right.
support is support as
Yep.
it relates to this.
All right, we're going to let Chief off the hook so he can get out of here. Sarah, anything else on, so we wrap Deer Grove and Chief's still here, we got him a captive audience. Do you want to kind of walk through the rest of the meeting? Recap it?
Sure.
It was,
Yeah, it's a pretty quick meeting. Went through the basic data points on the calls for February. We're up compared to other Februaries, but much less than January, which was good because January was a really big month. I know we've talked before about the 90th percentile before, and that metric that PAA had talked with us about, and so that data is now in the Chief's report. So for example, Chief, I'm kind of saying this to see if I'm saying this right, but 90% of the time we were en route from the station to arriving at the scene in 14 and a half minutes. Did I get that? Did I say that right?
Correct, all calls, 90th percentile.
90% we were with, yeah. So anyway, so that data is in there. We talked about the chief making some goals for this upcoming year, and hopefully we'll make them some SMART goals, the specific, measurable, that kind of thing. And we'll come back. Hopefully we'll be able to get some data that's by rural versus urban. You talked about, Chief, and you'll bring some ideas to our next meeting. John, you were there too. Did I miss anything, or Chief, is there anything you wanted me to highlight that I didn't?
I don't think so, Chief.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good recap. The data, hopefully to give you something to be a bit more comparable with a number that you can kind of discuss and have a benchmarky type number. That is a number that, you all have input on as well to, tell us what you would like your number to be and have us have a goal to shoot for. Just looked at myself, it was weird, sorry.
I did it a couple times too.
And I'll say for next month we hope to have our audit back to give us some financial numbers to begin in seriousness some discussion on staffing for not only the rest of the year but the future. So that would lead into discussions coming back here. I understand April 2022 is a little bit or a lot bit early to discuss a 2023 budget, but any decisions we make regarding additions of full-time staff will have a definitive impact on that.
Right.
So that we would hope to begin those next month.
All right. Any questions or any other comments from board members? All right, thanks, Chief. for
Sure. Y'all have a
hanging
good
with
night.
us. Thanks, Chief. All right, then we'll move right back in the agenda, and just going to keep us on our toes, or at least me on my toes, I should say. New business, discuss and consider agreements regarding credit management control services.
So this is something that I wanted to bring to the board because I noticed that the personal property taxes haven't been addressed. The last time it was brought up to the board was in 2018 to write off the 2015 delinquent personal property taxes, and nothing had really been done since. So I went through all of the records and found that there's approximately at this time about $80,000 in delinquent property taxes outstanding right now, which to be fair, approximately 3/4 of that is from 2021. That's two bigger businesses within the village. But I wanted to get something in front of the board to be able to address any delinquent debts that the village might have to start the process to be able to collect monies owed to the village. Right now, the only, so with the state debt collection, it's just the court system, the village court that has, that is using that. So I wanted to bring forward, and with the help of Rick, we were able to get this agreement with Credit Management Control Services, who has the state, they won the bid for the state skip tracing. So I wanted to bring this forward for everybody to review so that we may move forward with potential, collecting on village debts.
All right, thanks, Alicia. Any questions? Larry, any comment on this? Since
The only comment I have is, other than Rick did all the work, was it's $2 per person. How can you do any better than?
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to work with Mark and his team at my previous position, and they were very thorough and actually found, they were, like I said, they were very thorough and very helpful. So it's a good team that works with Credit Management Control in my experience.
All right, super. Just quick comment for me. I mean, anything we can do to get folks to honor what they're supposed to be taken care of is a good thing. And as Larry mentioned, and Alicia noted, it's only $2 a person. So comments from board members, questions?
Yeah, this is,
Go ahead, sir.
oh, sorry, I can't see who's trying to talk. My memory is that there was something in the public health order that the village passed that had something about not the property tax. I mean, I'm all for this, but there's just something tucked in the back of my head that there was something in it that we weren't gonna be sending folks to collections as part of that order. Does anybody else remember that, or do you know what I'm talking about, Alicia?
I didn't find anything, no. I found in 2018, there was a resolution to write off 2015 personal property taxes. but I didn't come across anything that kept them from going to collections. So that would be, if I need to look further into that, I absolutely will.
Yeah, I think that, Sarah, I think what you're remembering is in the first year of the pandemic, there was an opportunity for us to waive late fees for real estate tax payments when they came in late, and that was an option that was made available to us at the state level and the county level, and we did take advantage of that, and that was for a few months, I believe, in 2020. That might be what you're thinking about. That has long since expired.
Okay. Yeah, I think I just knew there was something that we were waiving about property tax, so that sounds right. I fully support the intent of this memo and getting folks.
And just to be clear, this is personal property taxes. Property taxes fall on the county to collect and maintain, and this is personal property taxes. So it is up to the village to collect personal property taxes and keep track of what's delinquent.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement regarding credit management control services.
Second.
All right, thanks, David. Thanks, Paul. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Melissa.
Thank you. I just have one other question, that without approving this, do we have any other recourse to be able to have these people pay their personal property taxes, or these businesses?
I can send letters. I haven't found a whole lot in our system or in any of the files that I found, but the only thing that I would be able to do would be to send letters. With this process, we can then refer this debt to the state, and they kind of take over. And the village is then made whole, and they collect any fees that they choose in doing so. So they have a little bit more teeth. They can utilize, personal taxes and wage garnishments should it get that far.
And it costs us $2.
Well, it would cost $2 for the skip tracing, but to refer debt to the state, it costs us nothing.
Oh, that is a good deal.
Is that a process that we should consider? Like, I think most agencies send a letter out saying, if we don't see your payment by such and such date, this is going to be moved forward to a collection agency?
And you have to do that.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, you have to.
Yep.
Did she mention that? Okay.
I do have
Okay.
to send out a 30-day notice, letting them know that if, they don't contact me within 30 days, that their debt would be referred to the state debt collection agency.
Perfect, thanks.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All right, then all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Second item under new business is discuss and consider resolution 2022-03, supporting LRB-5204/1, allowing combination of authority of recreational trails. Melissa was kind enough to put a memo in the packet, and I'm sure she has all the information around both the consideration of the resolution. So Melissa, take it away.
Thank you, John. This was brought to my attention by Stoughton City Council, passed a resolution like this in support of being able to expand their pedestrian and bicycle paths through when other ways of obtaining the property are unavailable through eminent domain and condemnation, which is like the last resort type of situation, and really something that we're experiencing in our community because of the glacial drumlin bike path and expansion past our borders. And so it's actually now has a bill attached to it, 2021 Senate Bill 805 instead of LRB 5204/1. And I think it's good with these types of bills to show, to help our senator and assembly person be able to go forward in the state legislature, showing that their communities are supportive of these types of bills. So that gives them more weight when they're trying to push for these to go through at the state level. So that's why I brought this forward, knowing that it would have a big impact on our community.
All right. Larry, any comments since this involves the legislature?
No, this is so, just an advisory
Yeah.
action by the village board, if it chooses to do so, that showing support for this move.
Wasn't this law put into play 10 years ago or something like that, where they,
It's more recently than that, and there's still some things that are yet to be worked out about how it'll even affect, but if you're wanting to connect a trail and the landowner doesn't want to sell, you know, there's one landowner can hold you hostage. That's
Yeah.
the reason why you have eminent domain for other purposes, from transmission lines to roads to other things. So it's just a policy question as to whether or not you think it's better to be able to do that or not do it. So.
all right. Any questions or comments from board members?
I'll motion to approve resolution number 2022-03, supporting LRB-5204/1, allowing condemnation authority for recreational trails.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Maybe with consent of the first and the second, we could replace that LRB number with the new build number. It'll just make it easier for the people receiving it.
Yes, I was going to mention that, thank you. For
I
SB
got ahead
805?
of you, huh? What was the number?
SB 805? Is that okay with you, Paul?
Yes.
I will
Yes.
agree with that as well as second.
All right. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Anybody abstain? Motion carries. All right, next up then we have reports from village boards, commissions, and committees, starting off with the ad hoc architectural committee. If I get my stuff organized here. We met on March 8th. Paul was there, myself, and a few other folks. Went through, this is the wrong one. Try grabbing the right sheet. We went through, I'll go by memory, the development that is going to include Duncan, and they had some elevation changes, a few other minor things on the building. That was the only item that we covered. These changes were requested by the corporate Duncan, and the developer was presenting them back through to ARC, just because they were significant enough to what they had. From my opinion, I think from the ARC committee, the changes actually look better. So the ARC committee approved those, and they're up for consideration, I think, next to Plan Commission, I believe. This coming up. Any other things I missed?
Yeah, I just think as part of the amendment, the changes included a second drive-through window, which is going to be absolutely necessary, especially for my family, you know, getting in line, so. They also talked about fiber cement panels and metal trim that would, you know, better reflect their corporate colors, so.
Yeah.
What do they need the second window for? Just out of curiosity. Did they
The feet, yeah, right. It's like McDonald's.
For Paul's family.
for Paul's family?
Yeah. No, I think it's just, it's probably based on what they think traffic will be, and in order to support the
Yeah.
flow and everything, I think that's a
Yeah,
smart
the
idea.
First window might be a period of time,
Hey, okay.
just payment, and then the second window.
Pay and then pick up.
just For flow.
Did you put that amendment in at ARC? Purposely having a
Yeah,
second
yes,
window?
Yes, I was the one who really pushed it.
Yeah.
So if that's for Paul's
That was for
family,
my sake, yeah.
it's also for my family too.
Oh,
Because
okay.
we're gonna be there every day.
Is there a connection between Culver's and Dunkin' Donuts, so it can just be a continuous loop?
Yeah. Well, the one you'll hit in the morning, and then the one in the early afternoon, you'll be set. So you can sit out there and drink your coffee and wait for Culver's to open. Any other questions for either Paul or myself on architect review? Otherwise, we'll move right into ad hoc sustainability. Heidi?
Thanks, John. We also met on the 8th at Ad Hoc Sustainability. We had planned on talking about the B cycle that we had approved as part of the budget for this year. And unfortunately, they're experiencing a lot of supply chain issues. So bicycles would not be available to us until next year, which we'll be able to take this opportunity to really plan out where the stations will go, and we'll have more bike path connectivity next year with the projects moving forward this year. And we'll be able to work with some of the businesses more in depth on, the placement and any sponsoring of the bicycles. So more to come on that in the future. Working on the solar RFP, which should go out soon. We also discussed No Mow May resolution, and some committee members working on modifying an example of a No Mow May resolution, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's to support pollinators. They have limited food supply early in the spring in our area. So if you let your grass grow, they have more habitat, food, and such in the spring. But the committee wanted to expand that to support pollinators throughout the year. So we should see something coming forward at our next meeting that's a little more general to support, shore support for the native pollinators in our area. We also talked about the Earth Day event coming up that we're working with the Friends of the Library on April 23rd at Cottage Grove School. We'll be distributing the pre-ordered rain barrels and compost bins. There'll also be a compost bin kind of a demonstration at 10:30 and noon. They'll also have a master naturalist giving walkthroughs through the school forest and prairie area. And the Dane County Trash Lab will be there. So it should be an exciting day. And you can pre-order your rain barrel now on the website, and the compost bins will also be available for pre-order by contacting the staff over at Public Works. Anything to add, John or JJ?
I think the only thing will be just, I think we just touched on it briefly, that the cleanup, the grove, there'll be barrels and gloves and such at each park, I think, like we did last year. We'll have to work with Sean on that. And parks, just that one. And feel free for anybody that wants to pick up trash now that the snow is gone. When you're out walking the dogs or whatever, there's plenty out there as well. But nothing else, Heidi, from me. And JJ, anything?
Nope.
When was that clean up the grove?
On Earth Day, 23rd, right?
Well, we actually kind of talked about maybe offering people the opportunity to come and get the gloves and some trash bags early and make it more of a cleanup month.
Week or whatever month?
So,
Okay.
still working on getting a post and website
Okay.
announcement made.
Okay. Even better. I know it was, I think a lot of people were pleased with it last year. I think it got folks out, especially if it's like a weekend like this last one. Any other?
One thing I just thought of also, John, I think the next meeting is kind of planned for our last meeting as this body separately, and then after that, we'll be joining with Public Works.
Yep. Next up, so hold that mic, Heidi, continue with Utility Commission.
Yep, we met the next night on the 9th at Utility Commission. We briefly touched on water and sewer system capacity, specifically in relation to development capacity north of 94, and JJ and Josh covered that, and we have plenty of capacity in that area. We also talked about PFAS testing, and there's a new program that Governor Evers announced where the state would pay for PFAS testing. Although the testing right now is pretty limited, and it's not very many of the many forever chemicals that are part of the PFAS. And there's not a lot of guidance at the moment on what any results would mean or what to do about them. So we're kind of waiting for a little more guidance from the state and DNR before we move forward with that testing. Otherwise, we're going to keep going forward with our system study that we talked about last month. Did I miss anything else, JJ, Josh?
Nope, you got it all.
All right. Thanks, Heidi. Next up, then, we had Plan Commission. Plan Commission was on March 9th. We do have a discuss and consider here for a site plan amendment for JEK CRE for changes to building elevation at previously approved multi-tenant building located at 11 Limestone Pass, also known as Duncan's New Home, as we keep referring it to. I don't know if anybody from JEK or CRE is on, but I know I can see Aaron on. So Aaron, you want to talk about this?
I think you and Paul covered it pretty well under the ad hoc architectural review committee. It's just a fairly minor change to accommodate Duncan. I agree with John that I think it looks better than it did before. So, the only condition we had was that was just a reminder that they'll still have to come in for a sign permit, even though they're showing the signage in the elevations.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Any questions for Aaron?
Didn't realize I stole your thunder there on Aaron. I was so excited about that second window. Yeah.
That'd be the only thing we talk about tonight is the second window. It's all important stuff. If there aren't any questions on this, is there a consideration for a motion on it?
With my excitement, I will motion to approve the request for a site plan amendment approval from JEK CRE for changes to the building elevations from a previously approved multi-tenant retail building located at 110 Limestone Pass.
Second.
All right, thanks, Paul. Thanks, David. Any further discussion?
Was there any staff conditions with that?
Yeah, the signage was the only one. I think we covered the rest of them the last go-through with this. There was a list of other items regarding where some of the turn radiuses and stuff like that were, right? Am I correct, Aaron?
Yeah, primarily for the width of the driveways to accommodate the access in, but yeah, that was taken care of back in, I believe, January or December.
The only other side note we got from the developer was that if this were approved this evening, that they're going to look to break ground fairly soon, like in the next few weeks.
Are they going to have coffee and donuts at their groundbreaking?
We'll put that in a request. Aaron, note that, please, when they ask you. All right.
I just didn't know if the motion had to have it with staff conditions as well.
Yeah, well, there is the signage one, so yes.
Well, then I'll add as part of my motion with the staff conditions as it relates to signage.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, any further discussion then? And thank you, Melissa, for keeping us honest. Having heard none then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? A vote for the second window. Okay. Other items on Plan Commission then, we covered, so we covered that, where we provided staff recommendations for Chapter 274, which we already covered earlier in this meeting. Talked a little bit about notice requirements as far as the 400 feet, which is double a lot of other communities in Indiana County. Didn't make any further direction there other than, continue to be as open and transparent as we can as a community. I think we're doing a pretty darn good job at that. We had an update from the Housing Task Force and walked through those bits. The hard work the task force continues, and shared that. Talked about the CARP-C Regional Development Framework, and Heidi joined us as a member there and chatted about that. From that perspective, and I think that was it. Am I missing anything, Melissa?
Nope.
All right. Or Aaron, too, since you were a vital part of that, Matt. All right, with that, then, we'll move right to Pier Court. David?
Yep. So we met on March 15th. Briar Patch sent out a note regarding updates as far as open cases and closed cases. The innovation grant was approved and found someone from Milwaukee to do a 2-day training next month. It's restorative circles. I did put a link in the minutes to the folks that are going to be doing that. A $2,000 grant was used to host Global Youth Justice for a 9/11 event. They didn't end up, Briar Patch didn't use all the funds, and Global Youth Justice firm reached out to Claudia and offered a training in Boston, so Claudia's going to go do that. Regarding recurring auto thefts in the village, we continue to have a conversation around a community panel regarding auto thefts. Claudia recommended producing a prevention guide. She said in order to produce this prevention guide, she mentioned that we have a town hall meeting every month hosted by the police department to get community-wide involvement. We can use that meeting to gather ideas for the prevention guide. I was going to reach out and get some information about that. I have yet to reach out to Chief Labor for that, but I will be doing that here this week. And that was it for that meeting.
All right, thanks, David. Moving then right to Library Board. Melissa, please.
We had 3 proposals for the financial feasibility study, and so 3 companies presented to us their proposals, and then we went into closed session and chose one. And can we say which one we chose? JJ?
I think so. Larry can stop me. We've got direction, just don't have agreed upon contract language, but we've got an agreement in principle with that firm, so I think you could probably go ahead and say that.
And it was with the Sweeney Group, as who the library board decided would be the best fit for our community. And so we're looking forward to working with them. And our next meeting should be in person here at Village Hall the 3rd Wednesday of the month.
All right. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah. We already covered Deer Grove, and so we'll move right to reports from village officers and kick it right over to Larry since you're present. All right. Lisa with an election update. All things going on election. It's coming up fast.
Yes, it is. You have a memo in the packet, which gives you all the dates for in-person voting, which will start tomorrow. So come out and see us. We'll be happy to help you with that. We do have some dates for some evening hours and a Saturday in April for in-person absentee voting. Sarah and I will also be going to Drumlin Reserve on Wednesday for voting for the residents there with our special voting deputies. And absentees went out last week, as you all know. We've received some back in the mail, and that's about all I have, unless you have some questions.
So can they put them in the ballot box?
The drop box?
Yes, the drop box.
No, they cannot. And you will note that the drop box is sealed off. The reason we did that is so that we don't have an incident where somebody would drop it off and we don't have information, like a phone number, or obviously we have an address, but or an email address to contact them to correct it, because it's very specific of what has to happen. So we figured it would be best to seal it off so that they can drop them during office hours, but they cannot drop them any other time. So for right now, for voting purposes, that will be sealed until we get further direction from the courts.
So they have, so if I brought back my absentee ballot, I would have to do it during Village Hall hours?
Correct.
To know. Thank you.
You could also, I mean, we will be here these extended hours on those couple Wednesday evenings and also on that Saturday, April 2nd. So if they dropped it during those times. It's also important to note that it has to be the voter that drops it. So if you have your husband's ballot or your neighbor's, you cannot drop it for them.
Interesting. Thank you for putting this together. This is very helpful. And I think you've done Facebook posts on this already, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's some Facebook posts out there. There will be more forthcoming. I'll put up little reminders when the Wednesday evening hours are, ahead of time so people have those if they need them. And the Saturday hours too, they can come out and see us.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Lisa. And thanks for all the effort, even though it's, again, confusing. So next up, communication most business. In this case, first up is approval of vouchers. Any questions, comments on the vouchers as presented?
I'll motion to approve the vouchers as they were presented.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Melissa. Any further discussion or questions or comments? Having heard none then, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next up, correspondence. I don't have anything, but if anybody else has anything popped up. Then we'll move on to upcoming community events, as we have a 70-plus degree day today. Anything coming up that's worth noting from anyone?
The Easter egg hunt by the Optimist is April 9th. There is, the Miracle League of Dane County is looking for volunteers and participants. They go to danecountymiracle.org to sign up. So far, they have 168 children signed up as participants, which is amazing.
Wow.
So we need a lot more volunteers this year. And it's so much fun, to be a part of. So I expect to see all of you there on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday night.
It's fun.
And then there's also McCarthy Park. There's a youth volunteer day on April 30th from 9 to noon. And they have donuts and fruit and hot chocolate and coffee there.
All right. And I think on the 9th also is the Parkinson Run is that on Glacial Drumlin as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Sean has his hand up.
Oh, and Sean has his hand up. Sean, what are you
The
gonna?
why?
Comment, add on to what Melissa said about the Miracle League. I was talking with Bill Schultz today, and they're actually looking at possibly adding a fourth night because they have so many kids that are interested. So it's growing and it's awesome.
Amazing.
Sean, did he give you any updates on the lights? I know that they're raising money and they were getting close, and it's probably another supply issue.
Nope, they have all the money raised. They actually raised more than they needed. The lights are on order, and they're hoping to have those installed by mid-May.
All right, wonderful. Any other community events? Anyone wants to note it?
I saw the chamber is promoting at Drumlin Reserve Taste of Cottage Grove on March 31st. You can check out their Facebook page for more information, partnering with the local restaurants.
Nice. Thanks, Heidi. All right, then we'll move on to future agenda items. We'll have the normal suspects, I believe. Matt, anything else to note?
Melissa, there's a presentation. Do you want to maybe mention what that is?
Sure, just put me on the spot. It's fine. No. Joining Forces for Families is a county department or service, which are social workers, and there's 16 of them throughout Dane County. And so the person, Janelle, who is currently for our community, and also I think Sun Prairie, Marshall area, and they're based in Sun Prairie, but they serve our community as well. And they'll be giving a presentation at our April 4th meeting so that we can all hear more about it.
Thank you. Great. All right. If there's nothing else, then I'll make a motion to go into closed session. The village board will go into a closed session establishing and negotiating a position regarding Deer Grove EMS District and joint fire agreements. The Village of Cottage Grove Village Board will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating and negotiating the purchasing of public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other specified public business wherever competitive bargaining reasons require a closed session. And as part of that motion, I will also motion, if I can, I think I can do this, Larry, to go closed session regarding negotiation of development incentives for TID number 10. Village of Cottage Grove Village Board will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting specified public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Troy. With that, we'll do a roll call. Please, Lisa.
Allen,
Aye.
Murphy,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Radcliffe,
Aye.
Valencia,
Aye.
Vandervelde,
Aye.
and Williams.
Aye.
Well, I was going to say, we have the opportunity to try to beat Melissa anymore.
So we need to,
What?
we're going to wait till that
Second.
kicks back up so we get
You were here
Troy and
first.
Sarah Valerie.
Oh, you actually did it? Okay.